Welcome back to Made Up of Wires, where we have been decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. If you're not familiar with the Castlevania Symphony of the Night decompilation project, go to soten.z.dev, where you can learn more. You'll find a link to the GitHub repo, where all the code that we decompile on this stream and all the code that everybody else who's working on the project decompiles can be found. And you can find a link to Discord where we're chatting about the decompilation project. The progress that's on soten.z.dev is how close each overlay is to matching. And if I remember correctly, there's, depending on how you count, there's 60 or so overlays for the PlayStation version and 106 or so, or sorry, 160 or so for the PSP and other versions, and that's because weapons are broken out into individual overlays on the PSP and those versions. In the PlayStation version, weapons are actually just in 2 files, and each of them has about 60 or so weapons. We've been working on Doppleganger, which is BO4 in the starting castle, and RBO5 in the reverse castle. Hey, Entropy Gravity Well, good to have you. Thank you for the faces. And I think that's where we're going to continue. We finished off one of the door functions last weekend. I think we'll keep looking at those today. I had my banner up at the front. I'll put it up real quickly. I will be at Game On Expo April 5th at 7 p.m. So if you are in the Phoenix metro area and intending on going to Game On Expo, stop by and say hi. And we'll be talking about what we talk about on every stream, decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. One of the things that I did, and maybe I should get a window up of this, tracking all the versions of Symphony of the Night is somewhat non-trivial, and I'm not sure my my timeline is 100%. Let me see if I can grab that. So there's a few versions of Symphony of the Night. We focus on 2 of them primarily on the stream, and that's because that's easy. But there's actually many more than that. Fortunately, they mostly share the same code. Let's see if I can find this window. So this is what I currently have for game versions. It's like a like when the schizophrenic makes a diagram of of all the things. I don't have my notes up here, but I think it's something like, no, I don't have them. I want to say like 18 different releases, and I don't remember, maybe 10 or so retail releases. And so just kind of quickly going over the history of Symphony of the Night and what I know about it from decompilation. And this is the history of the versions of Symphony of the Night, not necessarily the history of development and other things like that. We had the JP version, which is the original version that was released in Japan. Shortly after, just a few months actually, is the build date on the disc. There's a 1.1 version, and to the best of my knowledge, there's not many copies of this, and it wasn't so they did an initial print run. The 1.1 would come out as a secondary run, but not a whole lot there of those versions out in the wild, and maybe a little tricky to hunt down. As far as I know, the Saturn version was forked from the original JP version, not the 1.1 version, but if anybody knows better than that, you could let me know. Then sometime between that 1.1 version and the E3 version, that is the first US version that we know of, there was kind of a fork, and that fork goes in a couple different directions. One is this JP 1.2 version. Another is the version that ends up on, I don't think that's right. I think the PSN version is the 1.2 version, but I need to check that. I don't own the JP PSN version of the game, so I haven't looked at that too closely. I've put up another graph of this as well, which shows which versions match each other. So the US version was forked from that, and the Xbox Live Arcade version came from that, and later on disc in Konami Classics. Hey, Dig Down Deep, good to have you. And then there was a EU version and a Hong Kong version. I haven't seen the Hong Kong version in real life either. And as far as I know, the PSN versions are all based on the retail releases from the disc and are no different. Then we have this HD version, which we do and are working on. The HD version has a lot of the same textures and stage overlays. Actually, the stage overlays and textures for the stage overlays are all identical to JP 1.0. And from that, so for the PSP version, they went back and some of the bugs that were fixed in 1.1 and 1.2 show back up in the PSP version. There's a Korean release of that, which was first, and then I wasn't aware of this until looking all these dates up either. A US release, then JP, then EU, and we work on the EU PSP release because it was the first release to have multiple language support built into the game. And then from there, the PS4 release was made, and the PS4 release actually is, I have an arrow going from the US, it's the EU and JP releases baked into a disc using the Sony backwards compatibility PSP libraries. So Sony provides basically a PSP emulator that can run on the PS4. And then I haven't dug too deeply into the MIPS emulator yet, but there is a different emulator being used for the Android and iOS releases, and the way that those are packaged is a little bit different. I need to spend some more time on that. So anyway, that is a little bit about the timeline of versions. A lot of the files are identical, so we don't really have to look at every version of the game to get a full decomp, but there is a bunch of variation that we do need to look at. So getting back to Doppelganger, let's go to BO4 and see what's next. This 4BFO, I'm going to open Doppelganger 40 as well. And this is probably the next thing that we should work on. This top function differs slightly from the top function in between Doppelganger 10 and Doppelganger 40. We did the Doppelganger 40 version last week, so let's do the Doppelganger 10 version, and hopefully it's a pretty small change that needs to be made. So I'm going to copy that assembly. We can look at the assembly as well. I don't think it's crucial to do this, but boss BO4, non-matching. So in the doors directory, and it'll be the first file. So we see the same RO data that shows up. A jump table, and then our function. I'm going to copy that. And then open a new decomp.me tab. I finally cleaned all those up. Hope everybody had a good weekend. The weather is beautiful. Us here, I know a lot of parts of the US are having storms and all kinds of other things, but not us. It was wonderful here. I'm going to start a new decomp. This is the PlayStation version. And we know what the signature for this is because it is an entity update function. And I think what we'll do is copy in the Doppleganger 40 version. I'm going to grab that. And then from there, we'll just tweak it and see what needs to change. So I've got that highlighted, and just gonna copy that, and we'll go back. And so our symbols will be wrong, our global symbols will be wrong. And I do need to grab the entity extension for unknown door. This is probably a bad name. Because looking at what this function does, it's not necessarily door related, but that's what I called it. Names can be changed. All right, so we're at 91%, a little further than what the dupes report said. But let's kind of go top to bottom and see where things change. So the first thing is the number of cases is different, and we're getting some branch differences. And that's expected because something down below is definitely going to change. It would be nice to have a little, like, well, I don't know what they call it, but like summary gutter that shows you where the differences are. So we could scroll right there. I'm not worried about any of these branches at the moment because I expect that to be wrong. Basically, I think there's an extra case in here that probably needs to go away. So down to 133, this is our first difference. And we are going to have global differences as well. So I could take care of those. Z priority, that's interesting that this... Oh no, it did. Sorry. Misinterpreting him. I always want this column to be what this C code is generating. It makes more sense to me that what we generate in this column would affect the column nearest it as opposed to the column furthest. That's just my spatial thinking. So 133, we have the call to play sound effects, and that's correct. But it looks like there is some additional code that is missing, and this actually matches what was in the PSP. So there is no difference here. And that may be because of that bifurcation where the PSP goes back to the original 1.0 version of the game and is based off that. My understanding of the PSP version of the game is that Koji Igarashi was brought back to work on that version of the game. And it's possible that he didn't work on the point releases between the original PlayStation release and the PSP release, and that he just decided that he didn't like it. And so it looks like this case is not here in the original, so this might be our missing case. Our RO data is all basically plus 20. And that's because the strings, and I kept these out of the first one, but the strings that are static read-only are actually in the RO data that was uploaded here, so we can replace these, and this is what this should look like anyway. And then we'll get better offsets for each of these. These will be at the correct place. So let's go back down to 130 and see. What I want to know is, should it looks like case 8 is just going away, and I'm basing that off of this RO data. How far into the jump table is each of these cases? And this one is offset 44 into the jump table, whereas case 8 was offset 40. It's a little odd. It seems like they must have known that Doppleganger 40 was a thing when this was happening. 176, there's a difference. It looks like this print is not there. We have a slight difference here as well. Up on 160, or like right after 160, there is a label here. It looks like this case 10 is a step plus plus, and there is no case 11. No, maybe there is a case 11. Or this is default? No. There is some branch here that's not showing up. It looks okay. So this offset 40 was our 8. So we need to go back up and look at the RO data. It's a little different than a lot of the stuff that we're normally looking at. Every once in a while we have to look at switches, but it looks like case 8 is going to be the same as whatever is up on line 86. Which is this. I'm going to try adding the case here and see if... Oh yeah, I can't do that. Can't just add a comma. So that works. I'm going to try to duplicate it and see if it still works. We have to keep the code identical so that the optimizer knows, and we'd have to look at the PSP version to know for sure if this is duplicated or not. It does compile to the same thing. My guess is that it is just duplicated code. And then I think we do need a case 11 that just breaks at the end. And then we get our last symbol in that symbol table. So then let's look at the only thing missing then is, or the only differences are the constants. And so we should just be able to go through and fix all those. And we'll be ready to go. I'm going to do a global find and replace. I'm a little concerned because these addresses may they're far enough away that I don't think they'll conflict. the big concern with these is if you end up with overlapping addresses. But it doesn't look like that's the case. And curious to see some of these offsets, how they differ in size as well. So 117, I might add these. Sorry, I was looking at the offsets. Where is this? Yeah, line 117. Maybe not. So, yeah, now I remember why I didn't add these to begin with. So we don't often use val with position X. Usually we're using either the top 16 bits, which is the integer portion of the position, or the bottom, which is the fractional portion. Val is the complete 32-bit set, which is a fixed value. I'm not gonna add symbols for those because I think it'll be rare enough that there's no reason to do it. Let me just go through one more time, but I think that this is done. I'm looking for these D underscore symbols and making sure those are all correct. All right, so now we can go back over to BO4. That ended up being pretty simple. And hopefully we have name it the correct thing. Oops. Use the right paste, not that one. And that worked out great. I will come back and clean this up before sending it out for PR. There's some things in here like the entity IDs that need to be fixed and some other things. So I will fix those up at a later time. Let's see if there's anything else in here. There is quite a bit. These split at a different location. So I want to see which of these are the same and which are different. It is possible that there are some in here for RBO5. I was pretty good about making sure that I grabbed all the duplicates there. Let's look at the duplicates report and see which ones match. I'm going to look for this BO4 function. That's the same as 210. So there possibly is one function that I missed. No. So there's a few more things in RBO5. So the RBO5 equivalent is not this next function here, but the one after. And those aren't exact matches either. They're all slightly different. There are other exact matches here, but these aren't them. So let me look at this one. I'm not sure if I want to work on it depending on the size. Let's see, matching doors. Uh, 32K is a pretty big function. Not the worst. Let me look at the others in this. There's one other function on the Doppleganger 10 side, which is this last one. 25K, so similar size but smaller. It is not a duplicate for Doppleganger 40, so this 5774 function is a better function to work on. So let's do it. I feel like this is one of those things where kind of nothing to it but to do it. It hurts to think about it, but once you get in it, probably is not that bad. Famous last words. This is lighting effects, so I'm expecting a bunch of trigonometric functions and some other graphical things, which may or may not make it difficult. We'll see. So I'm going to make sure that I copy my context over this time. We're taking the BO4 version of this. I don't recall with Doppelganger 40, and maybe somebody in chat, or if you're watching later on YouTube, maybe you'll know, but does Doppelganger 40 have the same vault door that Doppelganger 10 does? So this isn't too bad. I was expecting, or at least fearful, that there was going to be a lot of go-tos and other things like that, but that's not the case. M2C did get the correct function signature, but I'm just going to change it to self because I like that name. And I'll put my semicolon there. We only have a few globals in this, which is nice. And here we have a global. The address of that global is being taken, and then basically an index multiplied by 4. So it's highly likely that this is a 32-bit value. The values that get passed into sign and are returned to the sign function are PlayStation fixed values, which means they have a 24-bit integer portion and a 12-bit fractional portion. So this may be something like that, but it's being shifted by 6. So I actually expect it to be, a Soten fixed value. I should go and look at, there is a Metal Gear Solid decomp project, and the reason to look at that would be Konami may have been using similar patterns there. It would be interesting to see if they're basically doing the same. I'm going to say that this is an F32 array, and I'm going to throw that into the context and get a new decomp. And see what it ends up doing down here. It grabs val, and that's fine. Same thing I said before. Actually, turns it into array access. This is something that I haven't seen necessarily from M2C before. That's pretty neat. I do want to keep it, even though it's in the context, I want to keep it in the editor, because when I copy this at the end, I'm going to have to take this and declare it anyway. We'll look at M2C real fast and see what the latest is there. So there have been changes in the last month or so. What a cool project. I really would like to see, especially SPIM, integrated into something like DuckStation, because DuckStation does have a very limited decompiler. I think what SPIM does is much better. All right, let's start at the top end, start going down. We need to get things compiling first. So saved register S0. Basically, something is going to be using var S0, and it likely is going to be uninitialized. Um, 102, it looks like is going to be a negative offset, and one down here we have offsets that are past the end. So let's look at those. So yeah, we're looking at something before the current entity. So I'm going to grab a calculator and figure those out. So a entity is BC in size. So for this one, we're subtracting 3C, which gives us offset 80. Offset 80 is 4 bytes into whatever entity extension is that we're looking at. And it looks like this may be some type of timer type object. So let's look for timers. We won't necessarily have anything for this yet, so I guess I'll just create a new extension. And so 7C, we don't know what that is yet, and we don't know what the type is. I'm gonna guess and say it's a sine 16, and then we can change it if necessary. So here we'll have self minus 1. I need to add that to the union. And then we have some on the other side as well, and so that's kind of the same thing. We're going to take hex 140 minus 8C, and that gets us to B4. And so let's find those. And all of those may need to be fixed as well. I'm going to use the same unknown 80 because I'm always really bad at doing that math. It never works out for me for whatever reason. And I'll let the compiler tell me what it is later on. 102, I screwed up a little bit. Yeah, we need a pointer to ext. And there we go, 82%. Not bad. And now we can start going through and figure out what each of these things are. So we have a offset of unknown 84. We're going to have to fix that entity extension. I'm going to kind of go through and both fix things that I know are wrong or should be changed, as well as look over here at the same time and see if there's other things to work on. This block 28, all it's doing is incrementing and then returning. Since the switch takes up the entire function, we can just make sure that this case is going to break at the end and get rid of that return. Same thing with the default. Default doesn't need to do that either. And that might clean up some of this. It doesn't look like it is quite yet. I should add this context. There's a few of these that are global across all stages and therefore all bosses. So all these block 28s, I'm going to make sure that they are, step increments and then that they return. This one up here, I may actually end up switching the order and changing this to destroy the entity if this condition is true. Often that's the way it's written. And so it looks like we have all of those now. I'm going to do that first. If it's equal to -1, we're going to destroy and return. Otherwise, we'll continue on and do all the other things. I am a little curious as to why I got rid of block 27 accidentally. Let me figure out what that was. Block 27 was a go-to to block 28. And block 28 is just incrementing the step. And we're actually a little further away than when we started. That's okay. I'm fine with that. Nothing's wrong. I changed the order of this. If it's equal to -1, do the destroy and then return. The compiler at the moment is keeping that in order. That may be correct. And maybe I should make it not equal and then do that. That's something that we can figure out with the PSP version of the function. There's a bunch of loops up here that I'm going to have to deal with. Block 31, I want to that's probably fine to duplicate. the way that this is being assigned in RGB order, no, RBG order, I'm going to change it to RGB. May not matter. Get rid of this warning. Uh, 108. So here we have a so what this is saying is basically the integer being generated is a 32-bit value, or var1 is so it's generating a 32-bit value and then storing it into 8 bits. I'm not too concerned about that. Anytime I see a negative hex value, that's often suspicious, especially when it's marked as unsigned. I think it's just an M2C-ism that we'll have to figure out. I want to fix a bunch of these loops, but there's still a bit more just to clean up. Any GAPI is struct access. There's a bunch of variables that can be renamed. I'm not sure yet if these RGBs, these are basically, this is kind of fun, and we can go down here and see. These are all just chained assignments, and I should actually get rid of the cast. That cast is going to be unnecessary. Sometimes they are necessary, but not often. And we'll see all of these just kind of collapse into the correct thing as I pull these up into one long line. That. I always think that's fun when that happens. I'm going to split the line just to make it readable for me. And just that little bit, collapsing all these things, got it to above what we started with. So that's why I'm not too concerned at the beginning with how close things are matching. I'm going to go through next and fix a bunch of variables. This saved reg s0, at the moment, I don't see any obvious instruction in this area that's using that s0. This is just setting up the stack pointer location. So I'm not too concerned right now. But we'll see. I do think it's going to be an uninitialized variable. And if that's the case, we should see on the PSP that it's fixed. Because MetroWorks, they had MetroWorks, it seems like, turned on with warnings. Just renaming this prim, which is what we call a temporary primitive, usually. This temp0 we can call entity. Entity ID, sorry. I'm going to move these up as I name them. I move 2 at a time? Oh, I can move 2 at a time. We have a bunch of these other primitives, and most, if not all of them, can be called prim as well. So let's do that. Where I did that, I want to get rid of this mask, get rid of the unsigned. And so I think in this case we're doing a nested assignment as well. But I'm not sure it's, this prim is probably pulled out. So let's do that. Still not quite right, but a little closer. Yeah, prim is already, yeah, we're already loading prim. We don't need to do it again. I don't see where. Oh, I see what's happening. We need to clean this up. We were sharing a bunch of code before, and now that's not being shared anymore, so need to fix that and make sure that it remains identical. This again is probably something that may be a little more obvious with the PSP. Oh, okay. Can't autofill the decomp. It's too bad. So something similar was happening there. If I can find it again. Yeah. So this RGB, if we assign them all in line, they're in the correct order. var s0 here. We'll call this last prim. We do need a separate variable for it. And that is the assignment that was not guaranteed. So looking at this, where was that last prim here? Looking at this loop, it's completely possible that this never gets executed. and last prim is never set. And so the code does not guarantee that last prim ever gets initialized. And so when the decompiler ran, it said var_0 is going to be something, and I'm going to assign it here, but I don't know what that is yet. And that is correct. That is exact. Whatever is in var_0 is going to get assigned to this field in the entity, and the compiler offers no guarantees. There may be other invariants that other code guarantees, like the value coming from this primitive buffer won't be null because of reasons. But the compiler doesn't have enough context at this point to guarantee that. And so M2C recognizes that and says, you're going to get an uninitialized value. When we look at MetroWorks for the PSP, we should see a warning. And if we turn on like WALL in GCC, we may get a warning there as well that this could be uninitialized. I'm not sure if GCC would catch that. All right, so this 80 may be a timer. I did want to look at some of the entity extensions because there are a bunch that are like timer only. And I wanted to see what... okay, they're at the front. They're the first field. This seems like it's the second field. I'm not quite sure yet if that's the case, but that's what it seems like. Temp T1, not sure yet if that's going to be... let's work out some of these variables and see if we can tell what they are. When we do shifts and other things like that, what's happening on the PlayStation is we have a 16-bit value, and we're trying to do comparisons with 32-bit values, and so it's going to do masking and shifting that seems maybe a little odd. And those go away eventually in the code. So we know that temp v1_2 should be a... this should be a 16-bit value, but is temp v1_2 32-bit value? I'm not sure. We'll figure that out in a little bit. We're taking the absolute value of that here, and we can probably get away with using abs. And again, that's something the PSP would tell us, because on the PSP it's a function call. But here it looks like it's generating the correct instructions. These end up being out of order for various reasons, not sure. Actually, this all may be related. And we may be able to get away with getting rid of most of this and just calling abs on this. Let's try it. No, not quite. This is all related, though, to... so let's look at our... I think it said this was assigned 16. Let's see what temp v1 is. It's assigned 32. And what is var a2? Also assigned 32. I think this is going to be assigned 16. I'm going to change that to assigned 16. And I think what will happen is now I can get rid of all of this. And we still don't get it. What if temp v1 is also assigned 16? Now can we get rid of it? We'll figure it out eventually. one of these is signed and one of them's unsigned. And, or sorry, one of them is 16 and one of them's 32. I'm going to leave it for now and maybe go debug that on the PSP side. Var S0_2 is I. And finally have our I variable. Entity ID actually, oh yeah, that's fine. It needs to be signed because it's -1 in certain cases. So now we can make this into a for loop. And get rid of our I plus equals and get rid of our while check at the end. Let's look at what this looks like. Yeah, we have other things here with signedness that and bit width that's a little funny. Basically, we're calculating U and V here, and so I'm gonna replace var A0 with U. U and V are the coordinates for in the texture space. They correspond with X and Y. Oh, 90%. Bummer. Did your knit stormtroopers turn out? Or what are you printing now? Oh, is this Darth Vader? Oh no, Mando. Oh, missing the top of his head. Aren't we all? I can, if you want me to edit that out of the YouTube, I can do that for you. Nobody sees it. Nobody sees it. Pull down the VOD. Happy to do that for you. So we have X and Y calculations as well. I think these are just being optimized, so I'm going to get rid of this. I haven't used any slicer except for Cura, and Cura's just worked so well for me that I've not looked elsewhere. What does Orca do for you that that Cura don't? Vars2_2 here is also prim. I'll look for all of the .next and do all those. As much as I dislike Ubuntu, I've not tried Arch. And I probably should. Professionally, I used Red Hat for so long, and then Fedora, that I got very used to just its tooling and whatever. Not the hugest fan, but it was what it was, and it worked, and usually it was old, and I knew what was going on. And I never really liked Fedora. At home, I ran FreeBSD, and definitely prefer FreeBSD. And then when I ran Linux at home, I liked Gentoo. I was on the Gentoo train back in early 2000, that time period. Yeah, so BSD is zero support for apps, and that all this dev stuff, this is done in Linux. And what is the Linux that most people use? Ubuntu. So I've kind of had to force myself. Now I have an Ubuntu desktop. And I tried to get Steam running real well on Ubuntu. I always read anecdotes about how good Steam is now on Ubuntu. And oh, what happened to my UNV? At least for the games that I care about, which is really just Overwatch. Steam, or Battle.net Steam, does not work as well as on Windows at all. My Mac OS pedantry is going to get the best of me. There is no OS 10 anymore. There is only Mac OS. So I'm pretty sure that I have played Superman 64, kind of unironically when it was released. My little brother had an N64, and I'm pretty sure that he rented it from Blockbuster. I try to explain Blockbuster to my kids, and they don't get it. It's probably because I'm yelling, "Get off my lawn!" And I don't remember anything about it. Oh, I screwed up. I named a variable entity ID, and it should have been prim index. This is pretty slow going. Apologize for the boring. There's a bunch of stuff at the end here. I might grab the PSP version just because I think it'll go a little faster. I'm gonna fix this. This looks like it's I as well. I think this is just a big for loop. So I'm gonna do that. There's our I up there. This one's 32. Nope, 16. And there's a bunch of really odd. So I is never going to be less than 0. But a bunch of this work is just done by the compiler to make sure that's the case, because it's an integer and it could be less than 0. And we can get rid of this down here. Yeah, all of these are just going to be I. What is Windows support like on ARM at the moment? I think if you hate Apple or not, one thing is definitely certain: their ARM support is fantastic. So this was kind of a big thing on the Apple side. There, basically, when Apple was using Intel, the whole architecture was just, standard Wintel architecture, EFI, boot, and all that stuff. Oh, did I miss I missed a break here. And obviously they moved to their own ARM chips, and then you lose EFI as well. So is the x86 emulation the same, like transparent? You just run an executable and it runs, and you don't care that it was one architecture or the other? I actually need to set that up. I'm going to set up Docker and all that on my Mac. And if you, they have a loader for Linux that allows you to use their x86 translation libraries to run x86 Linux binaries under virtualization and get mostly native speed. But for the talk I'm doing next month, I don't want to rely on decomp.me, and so I'm going to set up everything locally and want it to run fast. The only reason I don't develop locally normally is I'd rather not develop in a VM. But if it goes well, then maybe I'll just move everything to a local VM instead. What am I doing? I'm not really making much progress. There's a bunch of these that are this looks like all like mod. We're taking I+1 mod 16. Up here it's mod 25. I haven't looked at cubes in a long time. Is that going pretty well? You mean like this one? I feel bad I haven't spent much time in Discord. And part of it is just having kids. These seem all really out of order. I should be paying closer attention. I'm just mashing this up. Let's get back to something better. Okay, so here I was pretty confident that our v0_9 is going to be I+1 mod 16, which lets me get rid of temp s. But this, we need to keep our I+1 here. And then I can get rid of all of this. So here we're modding this looked like a mod 256. Then we're shifting by 8. So what if we get rid of all this and just do mod 255? Nope. So var v11 is Yeah, there's all these temp variables up here that are screwing me up. Yeah, cubes always sounded nice. All right, I think I'm gonna grab the PSP version and take a look at that. I have kind of a hard stop at 12:30 today, so I don't think I'm gonna get this finished. Let's look for this 6C. We don't want... actually, this is negative 6C, which is... possibly it's either 94 or FF94. So possibly here we can look at this and see how similar this is. So we have a relatively similar jump table, one extra spot at the top. I want to see some of the same offsets. We have offset 84. I'm not seeing offset 40 though. All the primitive offsets are going to be a little different, so I think this might be close. Let's try it. We'll see. So do the PSP version, Symphony of the Night. I'm going to grab the same context because I like that context. It was working out pretty good. We do need to fix the primitive. And add a 32-bit dummy. And let's see how this does. Yeah, that looks pretty similar. So I think that was it. I'm going to grab this version. It doesn't like my double semicolon. All right then. Not a very good match though. Structurally, it looks good, but definitely some things that could be improved. I think though that's probably where I'm going to end it. We'll take a look more at this. Slow going on this one, but that's okay. So we've been decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you're not familiar, go to soten.z.dev and you can learn more about the Symphony of the Night decompilation project. Specifically, we've been working on Doppleganger 10 and 40, and we'll keep doing that for a little while longer until either we can't match anymore or it's done. We'll see which one. I'm going to be at Game On Expo April 5th at 7 p.m. if you want to stop by. I reached out to Family Jewels. If you haven't heard the Family Jewels cover of Bloody Tears, I would say it's the best cover of Bloody Tears. There's a reasonable, like, Konami official one on the Saturn port of Soten. Other people have done, like, metal versions of it. Family Jewels, this is not a lie, is the best. And I'm not just saying this. So I reached out to Family Jewels and said, hey, can I use your cover? It slaps. It's the best. Can I use it for a demo at the Game On Expo? And Family Jewels sent me a reply back and said, hey, I'm going to be at Game On Expo. So not just me, but Family Jewels. Another band that we listen to in the Made Up of Wires house is Living Tombstones. We're an Overwatch family, and they have a great Overwatch song. They're going to be there too. So I'm just totally impressed with all the people, and humbled that that I get to be a presenter there. So really excited. But I'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time, doing more decomp. Good luck with your build. I hope your print goes well, entropy gravity well. Thank you, Dig Down Deep, and everybody else who shows up every day. And I will see you tomorrow. Adios.